let's just spend a few moments reflecting on what we've already looked at through the morning and that theme, that running theme of shepherding, rest and care. I have to just go back at the lighter end of things here, and let's just focus for a minute on, let's go back to Shaun the sheep and perhaps Mr. Bush. We've got our caricature end of perhaps part of what these readings are talking about. And as we've already looked with our Shaun the sheep trailer, Shaun the sheep works because, in fact, it gives the impression that sheep are far more intelligent than we give them credit for when they do amazing things and keep everybody's, as I've said, pull the walls over everyone's eyes for what they're really like. For us, it's still a metaphor that works fairly well in terms of shepherding and sheep, but perhaps we miss some of the deep nuances that were very present for those first readers of the Old Testament and for those Jeremiah verses for the Psalm, and then also for what Jesus said as well in the Gospels. Because anybody, I mean, Vic, I know you're from Wales, so I don't know whether you anybody here know a shepherd? They know a modern day shepherd. Anybody who's literally gone on the hills and done sheep? No. No. Anybody tried shepherding? No. No.
I've got a field next to me that's got sheep.
Okay.
Most of them all young in the field.
And I think that's sort of the reality, really, is that the best we have is perhaps, the neighbours. It's not something that's been part of your family or part of generations and we've gone through. So clearly, through the Bible, the idea of shepherding and sheep is a very strong metaphor that's used there. And it's something that we can perhaps only dwell on at the quiet surface because we haven't had to go and find our sheep on the hillside later down. We haven't had a 16-hour day looking after sheep. We haven't had to clean them, feed them, go and get them off the hills. All of those things where those first hearers would have had brought to mind lots of rich imagery of what they went through as shepherds. And we also know that shepherds as a whole were sort of viewed with suspicion a lot of the time. It's one of the reasons why when we hear about Jesus arriving in the world, the angels first appear to the shepherds, as when we come out next week, we're talking about God's call to the poor and the hungry and needy. The shepherds were seen very much as the lowest of the low, as street of suspicion. They live a way out of our way. So that's why Jesus came and said, I'm here for you. I'm here for people that nobody else wants to deal with. So it was very interesting imagery there, sure.
Well, I watched Country Found, I don't know if anybody else.
Yes.
Yeah, I always watched that. And it wasn't the last one, the last series. And this shepherd went to fetch his sheep. It's when we had a bad winter. And he went to get his sheep. Did you see it? The sheep. And they did a competition for people that had done a good act and that. And this neighbour went up and found him, because if he hadn't found him, he would have died. But that's what I call a good shepherd.
Yeah. So like a shepherd of a shepherd.
Yeah.
So somebody went and found someone.
My mother's family used to shepherd sheep on the slopes of Plinlimmon. And the uncle would go up for 3 or 4 days and shelter in the old house they used to have, just to go and check hold of the sheep. And he'd come back, and then when he come to shearing time, they used to have farmers from all around used to come and help, because there aren't that many of them. They used to take about a week to shear the sheep they had,
I like that advert for Specsavers, where he shears his
a dog,
and then he shears his dog.
So it is still something that's thank you for sharing that. I think it gives a bit more depth to our thinking there about this. And it starts to understand that when we understand God as our shepherd, what he's there sort of prepared to do for us, it's staying there. Yes, please.
You know, the one about the parable of the lost sheep, where we leave the 99 sheep and go out.
Yeah, go and find the one. Everybody is important, and that's what God's about. It's about every single person. This week, I don't know whether you saw in the news, the amazing images that have come back from Pluto, which is a fantastic example of human creativity and achievement to have achieved that over 10 years, 3 billion miles, the mathematics, everything else that was involved with that. And so we get some sort of idea, just a tiny glimpse of the vastness of the creation that we're part of, because what it's done is it's travelled the tiniest speck across our solar system, across then a part of our galaxy and everything else. But even though we believe in the God of the heavens and the earth, it's that idea it's so amazing that we're important at this. We, in comparison to the vastness of what we just happen to know about now, that God's there as our shepherd, which I think is amazing. Amazing to take forward for you. Now, one of the things you could think as we explore the idea of sheep and shepherd, you think, well, I don't like to be thought of as a sheep. Sometimes you can think, well, what's it saying? Sheep are a bit thick and they wander off and they need all this looking after and they need all this help. Oh, I don't need all that help. I'm better than a sheep. But in fact, it might work the other way around, actually. I think if sheep could talk, maybe that they'd have a bit more of an objection. You don't see sheep causing wars and injustices in the world, an imbalance of inequalities, hate crimes against each other, anything like that. Sheep actually live quite one with their ecosystem and have done since they came into being. So I think it may be the sheep that would have a bit more of a problem with it than us. But we are definitely like sheep, because we do need some shepherding in our lives. And this is where, when you gather as a Christian community and as a Christian, you know that as intelligent we are as human beings, that we all do need some help and shepherding and guidance. And that goes often when you're quite young, sort of Josh and Ollie's age, where you do need boundaries and be able to sort of give quite a strict path. But as soon as you get to adulthood, that continues on as well. And let's face it, most of your biggest mistakes are made when you're older. And it's that sense of actually needing this shepherding all the way through. We are like sheep. We are metaphorically wander off on our own. We'll fall down a crag. We'll get attacked by the wolves. We'll make our own decisions when, in fact, we do need to be brought back into the fold. And that's why I find the richness of the metaphor, to actually humbly come before God and say, yeah, I do actually need your help and your guidance. And this is where the Christian message is very strong, and where, as a gathered community, you can get some of that. We can get it together, we can get it individually, and the things and the ministries that we do. But we do need that help and that guidance. So I'm just going to leave that thought for a moment. Going back to the bits in the Mark verses that where Jesus has compassion on everybody who were like sheep flocking to him, and he has compassion on them. But it was particularly now that part where he was trying to have a bit of a rest, and where the disciples had been going for days, and he's trying to get them to have a rest, because they needed. But in fact, at that moment, they were still called on, the crowds were still there, and rest had to come another day. We do have to consider about, as we've already looked at this morning, how much we do rush around on occasions, and just looking carefully at how we use our time. And I know it's something I always very much try and think about, and do it right sometimes and don't do it right at other times. A question that I try and ask myself whenever I'm feeling a little bit stressed by overdoing is sort of, how many other people on this planet are bothered by my efforts here and now? If I'm a bit fed up of cleaning or doing something else, how many other people are affected or bothered by my doing? And if it comes down to actually, especially if it ends up just being me, I think, well, in fact, then it's where the buck stops, doesn't it? If the buck's actually just stopping with you, and you think, I'm doing all this running around, I'm not getting any appreciation on it, but in fact, it's just brought on by myself. And that's And that's the thing that we have to look at. Where God calls us at times is that, like Jesus in this situation, the people needed him, they needed the disciples. Sometimes our busyness is needed. We know that there are people who need our time and attention, and that for a period of time we know that it's going to be quite busy. So in my own mind, for myself, this week I've got a really busy couple of weeks coming up now, but I know that then we've got a break coming in August, and that's what I'm balancing those two in my mind through going forward, because my business in the next couple of weeks is to do with the ministry and the things I'm called to do, and it's then about saying, yeah, then I am going to step back from that. So at times in our ministry and our calling and our family life, there will be times when, yeah, we've just got to go all out for a period of time. But then, like Jesus attempted here, you've got to try and have that time away and see it very positively. It's countercultural not doing anything. Oh, why you're just sitting down? Why aren't you doing anything? I'm just having a rest this afternoon. It's a bit the idea that you're always on the go doing something. We've become a society where you're supposed to be 24/7. For everybody here that, and I'm old enough to remember when everywhere was shut on a Sunday, it was a day of rest. It doesn't matter whether you believe in God or anything like that. It was an opportunity for everybody to just have a rest, spend time with their family and their communities. And now the people I know that end up spending 12, 14 hours in a petrol station. Everyone needs to bring bread to the table. It doesn't need to be at the constant expense of friends and family and rest for yourself. So, I think, reflecting on busyness, you do have to, first off, always think, what am I doing? Why am I doing it? Who else is affected? Knowing that sometimes our business is called for, but you can actually then recognise that it's because it's for God's called you into that position. And to remember that as a Christian, one of the things that we don't do is not faith by works. As Christians, it's very important to know that nothing we do earns any points with God. We've done this on our Thursday morning group. We've done some interfaith material, and we've looked at all the major faiths. And when I did a little sheet, didn't Jenny, where if you actually look at the core values of all the major faiths, and you actually stripped away some of their wording, you couldn't actually really tell the difference between Christianity, Hinduism, Islam, Judaism. You couldn't tell the difference really. The difference with the other major faiths is that there is that sense of what you do earns something with God. Christianity flipped that on its head and said, no, you are justified by grace. In fact, I love you so much, what you've got to do is accept. Just accept that. And then I will live in you and you will live in me, and that together we will build this kingdom on earth. As Christians, we can sometimes completely forget that and think, I've got to be so busy for God and do all this stuff for God, thinking that God's going to be dead impressed. It's not about the doing. It's not. You got to think about the cross. Really, that's the whole point of Christianity. It's about the cross, and to say that
it loses its meaning if you're trying to.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah, people end up getting burnt out, and I know that's very much a particular case for ministry, but other people where you just got to say, no, just step back. And this is where it comes back to linking into everything, having Jesus as the Good Shepherd, having the times of rest, but knowing and asking exactly, it's not about earning your place in heaven by anything that you do. It is just, Jesus just says, no, I just want a relationship with you, and then together we walk together. That's the whole point of it. It's not the stuff that we do, which again is very countercultural. We're in a culture where it is about doing stuff to achieve something, to going on to better places. It's quite hard work. But ultimately it's dead simple. At the same time, don't overcomplicate it. Just accept Jesus, and that's it, be part of the community. It's really not hard, it's not hard. And then it also, just in some ways people can go one way, either people go and think about doing too much, and forget what Jesus' message, or think, well, I don't have to do anything, which has been taken very literally through the ages. Oh, I've just put my hand up, yeah, I love you, God, having had a horrible life, and see it as a transaction, and thinking that in fact it doesn't involve anything of the heart. Of course it involves the heart. It involves literally everything that belongs to Jesus in your heart, and mind and body and soul. Bringing all of this together, I think it's summed up in one word: it's care. It's about God's care for us, our care for ourselves, and our care for other people. And that's what we get with the whole metaphor of the sheep and the shepherd, of who we shepherd, who shepherds us. And that at the heart of this is God's care for us. And I'm hoping that you can go out the word with that word care very much in your mind, and to reflect on it not just very locally but nationally and internationally as well. All the things that have been going on recently with Greece, and the Greek people are really suffering, and it's right that there's been deeper conversations happen, but yes, you can go down and being very hard line with the Greek government and how they misspent or misused their money, versus in fact a caring opportunity and an olive branch to those people, knowing that we're all in this together. Care. It's a bit more complicated when you think about it, but if you go forward out of here today, care for yourself, other people, in the world, perhaps Jesus will guide us on.